Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Postgraduate Series Roadmap for the Future of Work. My name is Jo, and I work in the Sydney Future Student Team. I am the Faculty Partnerships Assistant for Business School. Next slide, please. I would like to acknowledge the tradition of custodianship and the law of the country on which the University of Sydney campus stands. And I would like to pay my respects to elders past, future, and emerging. And next slide, please. So tonight we have the great pleasure to have with us the great Associate Lecturer Tony Cannell, who will be taking over for the presentation. Take it away, Tony.
Thank you very much, Jo. I'm honoured to be here, honoured to be invited by Sydney Future students and to represent the business school as well. Just by way of a very short introduction, my name is Tony Cannell. Just call me Tony. I work at the business school. I'm employed to support academic language and learning, and I do a number of different roles, or I serve a number of different functions at the business school, as many of us do these days in our working capacity. So one of them is to be a teaching-focused academic. I also coordinate a unit of study. I work quite closely with some of our specialist programs as well, which we'll discuss later in this session. But I do work, or I'm embedded within the Masters of International Business, Masters of Human Resource Management and Industrial Relations. And I also work and do some teaching with our Master of Management program. So I do have a good feel for a lot of our different programs and courses at the business school. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is about your future, your career. And no, I'm going to try not to sound like your father and give you advice and speak to you sternly. But what I'm going to do is try and challenge you. So I want you to picture yourself standing on the side of a rather busy street, and you've got traffic going past you on both directions, and you're a little bit late for work or for class. You're checking the time, you're thinking about the best way to get across and navigate this road. But the two streams of traffic are actually risk and opportunity. So for many of you that may have studied a commerce or business degree as an undergraduate, you'll know that risk reward, risk opportunity sort of matrix, or that risk opportunity relationship is a really significant and important one. Life is full of risk, crossing the road is full of risk, but with risk comes some opportunity. So that's one of the sort of suppositions that we often take into business, into choices about what university we might study at, into who we might partner with. It's a common equation that we build into a lot of different scenarios, and it's there whether we see it or not. The question would be, all right, what am I going to do? Am I going to take the riskier path that maybe has more opportunity or more reward, or am I going to be more conservative, minimize my risks, and maybe strive for more modest opportunity? So generally speaking, of course, with risk comes more reward, but not always. Sometimes risk is just risk. So being able to recognize opportunity, separating that from risk, and also being able to notice things like false flags. Sometimes we see risk, or we want to see risk, or the pattern is suggesting that there's risk where there is no risk. So that's one thing I just want you to keep in your mind as we move through this short presentation. So this is a supposition. This is an idea that we can test. The idea is that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. I want you, as you're listening to me speak, to think about your own understanding of what that means. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? You might have a personal feeling on this supposition. You may agree or disagree. Feel free to throw it in the Q&A window. Let us know if you agree with this supposition or not. I'd be interested to see your thoughts and feelings on this. But essentially, we can trace this idea back to the Viennese psychologist Walter Mischel, who was lucky enough to teach before he passed away a couple of years ago, was lucky enough to be a professor at 3 incredible schools, Harvard, He worked at Stanford and he also taught at Columbia. Incredibly influential in the field of psychology, behavioral psychology. Some of you might know him from the famous marshmallow experiment. I believe some people call it the Stanford marshmallow experiment, but it's that experiment that kind of suggested, or his supposition, his hypothesis was that if you are the type of person who can delay gratification, if you can resist the temptation just to gobble and eat the marshmallow, that somehow your future will be brighter, more productive, your relationships will be more secure, and you'll be a more stable person. This has also been popularized by someone that you might consider less influential in academic fields, but no less influential in popular thought. Dr. Phil, Oprah's best friend, the best-selling author of these types of, we call them self-help books. He also puts forward this supposition that if you're dealing with someone, the best way to think about how they might behave in the future is to look at their past behavior. So we've got two very different thinkers from very different traditions. One of them more of a pop psychologist, I guess, or a popular figure in culture, and one of them a very straight down the line academic, both believing in the same idea. You might ask yourself now, do I believe it? And based on whose thinking or whose research might I be persuaded to believe that? So that's our first supposition. Now I'm going to hit you with an inverse supposition. This one says that past performance is just not a reliable indicator of future performance. That actually may sound familiar as a phrase to you, particularly if you've spent time watching advertising for financial products. In Australia, our governing body, ASIC, who governs securities and investments, they set the rules of the game for people that are involved in doing things like giving financial advice. So ASIC actually have a rule that if you are selling a financial product, it might be an insurance product, it may be about superannuation or insurance for things like losing your job. If you're giving any kind of indication that your product is expected to be successful, and you base that on, let's say, the past few years of performance data, then you must show this disclaimer at the bottom of the screen. You must show your audience, whether they're watching on YouTube or at home or on TikTok even, you must have a disclaimer that says, past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance. So I'd also ask you to challenge your assumptions and your thinking on this supposition. Which one of the two is more likely to be correct or useful? Or which one of them do you have an intuition is more accurate in the way it speaks about how the world operates? The other way to think of this type of supposition, that past performance doesn't really indicate future performance, is to think about something that's binomial. So a coin toss. If I toss a coin, the chances of being heads is 50%. It doesn't matter how many times I toss that coin, the chances of it being a head remain 50%. So we've got two different sort of suppositions about how we might think about the past and its influence or effect, or its ability for us to draw conclusions about what may happen in the future. Again, picture yourself standing on the side of a busy street. Now we've got two vehicles moving in opposite directions. One of us is getting us to think about what our future will be like or what the future may be. And the other is that drag from the past. We know the past because it's our past. We can analyze it. We can invest a lot of time and energy and resources in looking at data. But how useful would that be for actually understanding what our futures will be like? Short term, yes, there may be a fair degree of reliability in such a data set. But what about a 5-year period or a 10-year period? So what I want you to actually do here is to think about how you think about the future. It's very, very important. Here's a tool for us to make a prediction. It's a graph that shows us something that's very, very popular to be taught in business schools at the moment. And it's this idea, this supposition that artificial intelligence will evolve to a point where it replaces us all, where we will no longer have jobs because the jobs that we were doing will be taken over by machines. Now, again, I want you to challenge that supposition. If you look at this data and the way that it's presented, we can see that, yes, in the last 30 years, there's been a fairly steep trajectory in terms of computing power doubling at least every year or two. So yes, it looks like we're on something that might approach, I don't know, a linear kind of expansion. But there's a prediction at the end here that in 25 years' time, roughly, that we will arrive at a point where artificial intelligence will actually become generally intelligent. So what that means is the people that put together this chart have looked at the past, they've predicted the curve or the trajectory that this technology will take, but they've added this very, very significant claim, the claim that we will have some sort of intelligent artificial system. I would challenge this claim because currently our understanding of machine learning, AI, even robotics, mechanized systems, nothing that we're using today can do generally intelligent tasks. We can only point it at a problem. We can train it to, let's say, look at thousands of pictures of cats and then tell us with a high degree of accuracy whether the next picture it sees is a cat or not. But what it can't do is it can't say, well, what I might train my intelligence on today is thinking of a more efficient way to operate this supply chain. We just don't have these types of systems. So the claim that these will magically appear in the next 25 years, it may be a specious, or it may be a claim that we might not put a lot of faith in because we're just not seeing evidence to that supposition. So again, very commonly taught in business schools all around the world, they keep telling us machines are going to take our jobs. We could also look at data like this. So this suggests, and if we just take the top 4 examples, it suggests that anyone working in data processing, job-related information management, down to things like administrative tasks, that these people are going to be replaced by machines. Again, we need to be very careful about how we think about the future. Yes, you might say, well, the development seems to be tracking in this direction, so it's quite normal for us to make the claim that, yes, machines will replace us in maybe 25 years. Or you might say, well, actually, no, past performance is not a super reliable indicator about what's on the horizon. It might not be machines that replace us. It might be things like the metaverse, which our friend Mark Zuckerberg has pumped so much time, energy, to the point where he has rebranded and renamed his primary company. They're looking at virtual worlds, not necessarily driven by machine learning or artificial intelligence, still dependent on human interaction, humans being together and operating, doing business, meeting like this in virtual spaces. So be careful about what you're learning, be careful about the messaging, be careful about the effectiveness of the predictions that you're being taught or you're being exposed to. Draw your own conclusions, but think about your thinking. That's the most critical part of the message today. Another idea, the 3 most popular jobs, which employ around 11 million people in the United States, are going to be made obsolete. Wow, that's a very strong claim. It's not really testable because it's a claim about a future time. There is no timeline here. So it might be hard for me to sort of even start measuring or looking at indicators or signals of this future if I don't have a timeline by which to make my predictions. Now, I actually took this idea from someone that I admire. His name is Jaspreet Singh. Jaspreet runs a YouTube channel where he kind of teaches business, finance, and economic concepts. He does them in short videos. They're very easy to digest. He can explain complexity. He can explain fairly complex financial and business terms for a general audience. I really think he's an engaging speaker and he makes really, really interesting videos. The reason why I'm giving him so much praise is that he has over 1 million, I think 1.11 million YouTube followers. So again, I might say, I like Jaspreet. He has an engaging speaking style. He really, really communicates his message effectively. He can make me understand complexity by the way he explains and frames arguments. He has 1 million followers, so he must be right that we're all doomed and 11 million people are going to be out of work because the jobs they're doing today simply just won't exist in some sort of future world. But again, I encourage you to challenge your own thinking around these types of suppositions. Are you relying on his influence as a YouTube celebrity or as an effective communicator? Do you have other sorts of biases that might mean that you would expect this to be true without really engaging some of your critical faculties or your critical thinking? Again, I'm standing on my very common street now. I've got 2 cars moving by. One of them is asking me to consider the future of work. What am I going to be doing in 5 years from now? The other one is looking at the current job landscape, which, as we know, has been severely disrupted by the current pandemic. And these disruptions will continue for at least the next 2 or 3 years. Some would argue longer. The question I have for you to consider is, where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Actually, maybe the better question would be, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be? We might not actually know where we'll land, but we can definitely navigate the plane in a direction where we'd like to land. So just keep that in mind. This is my final supposition to share with you. This is actually very common to find taught in a lot of business ethics classes before the pandemic, but it's still lingering now. And again, I'd like you to question this idea. The idea is that young people, by which I mean millennials and Generation Z, are being sheltered. There's something about parenting, there's something about society, there's something about the way we're treating young people that is actually sheltering them from adversity. It's helping them to navigate risk without giving them a chance to take on risk themselves. It's helping them steer away from danger because we're worried that the world will harm you. We're worried that stress is such a bad thing that we want to remove it from your lives. This is a claim that was very much popularized by the author of this book, The Coddling of the American Mind, the co-author, Jonathan Haidt. Now, Jonathan Haidt is a business ethicist. He works at the Stern School at NYU, I believe. I think he's still there. But he made this claim that young people today, they just don't have any resilience. They've been sheltered, they've been mollycoddled, they've been treated differently to previous generations, and they're just not made of that strong, stern, willful material that us older people are made from. So again, I want you to question this supposition. Look at the world around you. Look at what's happened, maybe even in your own life. Some of us have been locked inside for the better part of 2 years, close to 2 years. Some of us have had to leave jobs. Some of us have been separated from family, from friends. Some of us have been denied access to opportunity because of a virus, because of a global outbreak. I don't want to get too negative. So what I want to direct you to is some of this emerging writing. Some of this is taken from business papers like the Wall Street Journal, but you'll read things in more popular publications like Vox. You might have even read them in your local magazines, online publications. There's this emerging sense that actually Generation Z and millennials have dealt with this crisis, with the effects of this pandemic, better than some of the, let's say, generations that were perceived to be tougher and made of more stern stuff, better than they have. I find that quite a striking idea, that we've suggested that you don't have resilience, that you can't deal with stress, you can't deal with disruption or danger, but the evidence is starting to point in the opposite direction. So again, challenge what you're reading about the world, challenge what you think about the world, because most of what we think is sort of received wisdom, or we take it in through the media that we consume. So ask yourself, What about me? Do I fit that description? Am I part of that set, or am I different? Right now, I'd like to play what I call the radical card. I want to leave you with an idea. Again, I don't expect you to believe me. I'm not looking for disciples. I'm not trying to sell a self-help book. What I want to do is challenge your thought process. I want you to think about your thought process. Think about these suppositions. Think about all of the assumed knowledge and wisdom that you've received through your education. But this final card, let's consider it a radical idea. The idea that I want to propose today is that actually it is the barriers that people put in front of us that make things worthwhile. The reason that we work hard isn't to necessarily make money or to remove adversity or to make our lives easier. The kind of fun in the attainment, in the achievement, the meaning in the achievement is actually in overcoming the barriers, overcoming the resistance, managing the tensions in our lives. If we meet what happens to us, not just in the world of business, but in your life, if we meet these kind of obstacles as challenges and we rethink them as things that once we overcome them, they become part of our resume, our life resume, if you will, or our CV, then we can start to see adversity and difficulty as opportunity. And I think that takes us back to my first idea about risk and opportunity, that some things that are packaged as risk are actually opportunity in disguise. Now, Harry Styles, the incredibly handsome gentleman that I have on the cover of Vogue here, very wealthy and famous pop star, he has this philosophy, if you will, a supposition. He's saying here that any time that you put a barrier in your life, you are limiting yourself. So I would say, Harry, thank you for that wisdom, but you are a 25-year-old rock star who has all of the trappings and privilege of basically the accident of birth, that you were born incredibly good looking with some degree of talent in singing and dancing. So for someone like that to give me advice, and advice that all I need to do is remove barriers from my life, it sounds almost flippant. It sounds too easy. So rather than taking this Harry Styles philosophy that all we need to do is remove the barriers from your life, I really want to challenge you to say, no, the barriers are what makes my life meaningful. The barriers are what makes achievement. A final example. Now, for all of the oldies in this group, which is probably a sample size of one, we might think that the Beatles are the most talented and successful popular group that has ever existed. A run of hit songs and groundbreaking albums produced in the 1960s. Probably the most famous and influential group of musicians, perhaps of all time. But remember, maybe the past isn't the most accurate indicator of the future. But my point here is that many people ascribe to the Beatles and their achievements a kind of magic. They kind of think the Beatles were just these incredibly talented young people that were able to produce fantastic music that the world has never heard before and will never forget. But I would challenge that, and I would say, no, it wasn't magic. It wasn't God-given natural talent. They were not touched by the genius of the creator. When they went into the recording studio, they were going into an incredibly foreign environment. They had never operated technical equipment like tape machines, compressors, equalizers, recording consoles. They had no idea what they were getting into. They must have been terrified. The engineers at EMI Studios, where this photograph was taken, they were professional engineers that told the Beatles, stand here, sing in this direction, and do not touch any of the equipment. That's our job. So the Beatles actually had to fight through this barrier, a technological, a social, even a class barrier, if you will. They needed to push through this before they could actually recognize their own talent and, dare I say it, their genius. So the barrier is what makes achievement worthwhile. I'm going to leave you today with a couple of ideas. One of them is that any degree at the business school, frankly, any degree at any business school these days, is going to challenge you to focus on things like analysis, critical thinking, analytics, innovation, problem solving. These are the kind of buzzwords in education now. And again, it kind of rests on that idea that the machines are going to replace us. So again, I would say, don't think about machines replacing you. Find the value in these ways of thinking in and of themselves. They're enriching. They can help you overcome barriers, obstacles. For me, the biggest barrier I'm facing at the moment is how can I make these Zoom sessions more engaging? How can I connect with you? How can I connect with students across this digital divide? The technology's been astounding. It's been incredible. It's helped me to do my job when everything else in the world said, stay at home, don't go anywhere. But still, I think we can do better. I think we can develop our levels of engagement. I think I can use this technology in new ways. So that's the barrier that I'm trying to overcome. What barrier are you going to overcome? I'll leave you with some thoughts from someone who is frankly way smarter than I will ever be, the cosmologist, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
First, there's very little in life that's worth achieving that isn't hard. Those things that are hard because most people can't do it. That's why we say they're hard. If you work at it and achieve it, and you continue that throughout your life, you are distinguishing yourself among others around you by what you have achieved. And those who rise the highest are those who keep solving hard things. And you'd be surprised how lazy, intellectually lazy we can become. You go to college and you say, I'm going to take this easy class so that I can get an A. And then everyone will be impressed with my A. Well, A is supposed to be a proxy for how brilliant you are. Well, your brilliance is not measured then by your grade, it's measured by what you actually accomplish out there.
And on that thought, Joe probably never thought this would ever happen, but I'm going to throw from Neil deGrasse Tyson back to Joe for our Q&A session. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was a very fascinating talk. I could have listened to you for the rest of the evening. That was amazing. Thank you so much. So like Tony said, this is now the Q&A session. So please feel free to enter any questions you may have in the Q&A box at the bottom down here, and we'll do our best to answer them. All right, we already have a couple of questions in there, Tony. So from Daniel here, and I think it will be for you. Do you see project-based or gig-based work on the rise globally? And do you see the skills around agile, project management, and critical thinking becoming a must-have skill set?
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Daniel, for the question. Again, yes, agile approaches to work. We've borrowed them from the efficiency gains that we've seen in areas like software development. We're now applying them to everything. So what I would do is say, challenge that assumption too. We often steal buzzwords, we steal practices and ideas from other disciplines or other parts of business, and we just assume that they're going to work in every context. So agile, a very handy thing to understand, but when you become a Scrum Master, everything looks like a solution that can be solved with a stand-up meeting for 15 minutes in the morning. So again, just learn the skills, learn the language, but that doesn't mean you have to be a disciple or you have to, resign yourself to just operating in that mode. Critical thinking, I think, is something that has fallen out of favor in education, and maybe thanks to the dystopian view that robots are going to come and kill us and take our jobs, maybe that's brought it back into favor. But look, universities are called universities for a reason. We deal in the critical arts. We deal in critical thinking. We don't tell you what to think, but we're very, very interested in how you think. A lot of the assessment types and tasks that we ask you to engage with are more about seeing how you manage complexity, how you manage problems, how you communicate with others, how you deal with things like online learning and getting your assignments in on time through our learning management system. A lot of that's designed to kind of test your ability to think on your feet. Critical thinking, yes, I think it's a must-have skill set for anybody, not just university students. Gig-based, I think it's probably going to plateau at some point. So everybody wants to enjoy the van life. The Great Resignation is what we're in the midst of right now. So people are going to quit their job, they're going to buy a van, and they're going to try and become an Instagram famous traveler. But that will reach a kind of critical mass, as will people that think that working gigs is the way they want to operate moving forward. I think we'll meet some sort of critical mass point, and then there'll be a natural attrition, and we'll realize that, well, gigs are one mode of work, but they're not the primary or the only mode of work. That's my sense.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the question, and thanks, Tony. Next question is from Rachel. We've seen through your presentation, Tony, that you use a lot of references, through scientists and other personalities. And Rachel is saying that her prior degree not being in business, she's wondering what kind of reading she could do to kind of introduce herself to the field of business.
I've actually got a really short answer to that question. Send me an email, and we'll put my email up in a moment. Send me an email, Rachel, because I actually have a list of readings that was recommended to me by a gentleman called Matt. I'm blanking on his surname. He's a graduate of the University of Sydney Business School. He's working at a startup now. And he actually sent me a list of really, really good business readings, some of which would appear in things like MBA courses, but some that are broadly about things like time management, managing people, a broad range of topics. So I kind of have a reading list that I could send you. So Rachel, get in touch with me. Happy to share that reading list with you.
All right, amazing. I've shared your email in the chat for Rachel or anyone else who would like to email you after this session. Now, Palvi is asking, what is your take on management consulting as a career? By the way, anyone, since we're quite a small group tonight, and this is quite a friendly setting, if you wish to unmute yourselves and talk to us directly, feel free to do so.
Thanks, Palvi, for that question. I would start by saying, experience yourself in management first. So a lot of graduates are very, very keen to get into consulting, to get those big contracts with those big companies. But you do need to focus on management first. So yeah, my advice would be take a great management course, and we have several of them. We'll go through some of these in a moment. But yeah, get some management experience, work, manage people, manage a diverse range of teams. It doesn't have to be a job, and we know how hard it is just to go out there and get a job. Sometimes you've got to make your own working context. So you might work at a volunteer or a not-for-profit. Put a team together, go to them, the people driving the project, and say, look, I'd like to form a small team for this purpose. Do some work for free. Create a project where you know you'll have to develop those management skills. Don't just expect to land in a big five firm and be given a management position, but definitely work towards that. I hope that answers your question. Joe, it's probably a good idea. I can see questions coming in about the programs themselves. And in my haste, I think I skipped over that. But if I share my screen again, I'm happy to go back through and start kind of unpacking the whys of studying at the University of Sydney and some of our programs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'm going to change hats now from academic to, salesperson in some regard. Yes, our accreditation, the University of Sydney Business School is the most accredited business school in the country, high ranking on a number of metrics. We're the only member of Australian member of SEMS, so we're the local SEMS member as well, and I know that because I work in our management education programs. So that's the kind of wow, aren't we great? Then this idea of future-proofing your career. Many of you are here now because you're thinking about making that pivot, or you're thinking about making that shift in maybe the trajectory that you were on that may have been disrupted in the last 18 months. 2 years. Yes, we are here to support you. And we know that even when you start your degree, you're probably going to change your mind on the directions that you feel yourself drawn towards. So offices that we have like careers and employability, incredibly useful resource for our alumni, our students to go to, get some advice. It's not here, but at the business school, we also have things like the Job Smart program that trains you in things like preparing for interviews, for walking in and making a good impression when you're meeting potential clients or future employers. So we have a kind of wealth of curricular and co-curricular activities around supporting you, and this driving idea that we want you to future-proof yourself. But that means thinking clearly, methodically about your future. So challenging you to think about what your future might be, looking at the signals in the noise, looking at emerging trends, emerging business practices and technologies, and sort of maximizing your ability to leverage off your education, and to take you maybe not into the area you thought you would end up in, but to take you in somewhere, take you down a career path that's way more interesting and stimulating than maybe the one that you were committed to would have been. These are the breakdown on our Masters of Commerce program. So it's offered in a 1.5-year delivery or a extension, which is the 2-year program. Joe would have to speak to the details of who would be eligible based on things like visa requirements and all of that stuff. But I would say some kind words about our specialist programs. Some of the academic leads, program managers, and teaching staff in our specialist programs are some of the most inspirational and amazing educators that I've had the pleasure of working with in my career. I do have a background in philosophy and education management, but I've been at business schools before where the academics are very good at publication or they're very good at research, but they're just not very interested in the teaching side of the job. What I can honestly say about our specialist programs are that they focus a lot of their energy, time, and they're very, very committed to the quality of their teaching. And I'm very, very proud to work with those teams. We also have our management and leadership programs. So Masters of Management, the SEMS team are fantastic as well. Great opportunities for workplace learning, placements, and exchange. And we have our full-time Master of Business Administration, which is also a 1.5-year program. Used to be highly competitive for entry. I'm not sure if that's still one of our most competitive courses to get into, but Joe would know as well. So there's a range of programs on offer in the business space. Master of Commerce is one of the areas I do have a lot of experience working with because I've been with them for about 5 years now. An evolving program, a large program, but again, committed to excellence, committed to doing more than just saying robots are going to take your job, so you better not learn accounting. They're committed to thinking about ways of interpreting futures, picking up on trends, using your critical faculties, your critical thinking skills, and developing those in such a way that you look at things like social businesses, you look at things like some of the big corporate players that are operating globally, and you start thinking about them in different ways, or being able to apply different lenses to the way you think about commerce and business, locally and globally. So again, they've got an opportunity to specialize in 8 areas: accounting, finance, digital business, global logistics, data analytics for business, very popular at the moment. Marketing, economics, some of our more traditional business disciplines, and strategy, innovation, and management. So to answer Palvi's question before, which was a great question, if you are thinking about a career in management or management consulting, then I would focus my energies on perhaps disciplines like strategy, innovation, and management, but also look at things like digital business, data and analytics for business, because we know that managers are going to have to wear those hats moving forward as we do integrate more machine learning and AI into business systems. I hope I'm not racing through these, Joe. You're not telling me to slow down.
You're doing great.
Oh, thank you. I
let
might
me
have
know. Let me know if you need me to take over. But so far, you're doing my job perfectly.
Just tell me if I pass the interview to join Sydney Future Students, and I might come and get some experience there too. Again, the breakdown comparison between the Master of Commerce Extension. For the extension, you're going to need, or you're not going to need as much business experience. So it's sort of designed for people with maybe coming to us from a science, biology, or arts background. We've had architects. We've had people who've worked but have wanted to come back and do some business studies. So I guess the 2-year program is aimed more for people that might not have that experience and pedigree in business, whereas a 1.5, you're going to need to demonstrate some business experience, and your bachelor degree would have to be in a business adjacent topic or related topic. One specialization for the 1.5-year program. So you might do your specialization, let's say in marketing, but if you do the 2-year program, you've got the ability to specialize across 2 different discipline areas. So that's fantastic. Again, the big 8 at the business school, at the Sydney Business School, we've trimmed these down. We've wanted to be more quote unquote agile, adaptive to the way the world is. And we've actually sort of rationalized our offerings. And I'm really happy in the direction that this is moving, because it clearly speaks to things like, transport, global logistics. We do have that fundamental, or the things in business that never change, like marketing and the principles of economics, accounting. We've got emerging disciplines like innovation and entrepreneurship, really, really popular at the moment. And we have some of the things that we know are going to have the biggest impact on business moving forward, like data and analytics, also innovation and management as well, because they're just changing year by year, month by month, in some cases day to day. You have all of our socials, but as I said, please feel free to email me directly. We'll pop my email up on the final slide. If you do have program-related questions related to the MCOM or our specialist units or our management program, might be a good idea to throw some of those into the Q&A for Joe to start sifting through. We also have Karen online, who is working away in the background as well. So thanks to Karen for being here. But we're on everything: WeChat, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Great way to keep your pulse on what's happening. Great way to get really immediate news. I know I'll go to socials and find things out quicker than I will if I have to sift through my email inbox. So do take advantage of our social presence. It can be a great way to get some of the inside running on what's happening at the university, perhaps before even some of the academics at the university know what's happening. For information, I guess, around studying and our postgraduate courses, there's a link there, and also my email's up there now. It is not to be confirmed. It is confirmed. That is my email address. And as I said, if you'd like anything from a reading list to a sense of what it's like to study at the University of Sydney Business School, particularly if you're interested in accessing our support, or if you think you might need some of our support, I'm definitely the person to introduce yourself to, and I'd love to communicate with you. Joe, how are the questions going?
Very good, very well. The Q&A box has been filling up as you were presenting, so that's amazing. I wanted to, so thank you very much for giving our attendees a little a little bit run through of our offering. I wanted to pick up on one of the specific questions. How is AI integrated within the Masters of Commerce program? Why not study a Masters of Information Technology, and so on? So very good question. Now, if I wanted to expand a little bit on this. So the reason why we do not have, like, you could say that maybe our offering is limited in the sense that we have Masters of Commerce, and then we have the specialist masters, and then the MBA and the management, and that's kind of where it stops. The reason behind this is because, for instance, if I take the Master of Commerce, you actually have 8 specializations that you can pick from. So the reasoning behind this is because we really want you to be able to customize the degree to fit your future career needs. So all those 8 specializations: accounting, finance, digital business, global logistics, data analytics, marketing, economics, strategy, innovation, and management, that is really up to you to organize them as you wish. Also, the Master of Commerce, gives you the opportunity to study in other areas. What I mean is the study plan is built in a way that you will have the opportunity to, maybe take on a particular project, or decide to do some professional experience outside of the classroom. You've got your core units, you've got your foundational units that are that you really need to go through, your specialization that you will pick. So 1 for the 1.5 Masters of Commerce, or 2 if you decide to do the extension in 2 years. But then you will have some selective units, and you can kind of play around and decide what you wish to include in your study plan. And your capstone will be your project that you will undertake. So I hope that answers the question. Now we had a good question from Jacqueline. There will be some medical jobs, some accounting jobs, some writing jobs that will disappear due to robots. Some young people today need to be strategic about what to study, otherwise they will become obsolete in the next few years. So I guess, Tony, maybe for coming back to Jacqueline's question, if you could maybe summarize in your top 3 points, what would be maybe the 3 main, I would say, skills that or the top advice that you would give to our students to not become obsolete in 10 years' time?
Yep. The first thing I'd say is that the chances of you graduating on a Wednesday, accepting a job on a Friday, and then having that job disappear on a Monday are infinitesimal, minimal. The chances of you saying, well, I want to be a copy editor, I want to work in a realm where I'll be looking at texts and correcting them, or maybe a translating sort of field, they might be jobs that would be susceptible to being largely replaced by machines, if you will. So I will grant that. But what I'd kind of say as my number 1 point is that business specifically will always be a human sport. You'll either be working for or with people. The machines are, and I put this in one of my answers in the chat, the machines are going to be okay. They'll take care of themselves. They'll run. As long as we keep them fed with electricity and maintained, they're going to be okay. But people like our customers, people that are engaged along our supply chains or in our value chain, our stakeholders, both internal and external, the majority of those are going to be human interactions. They're going to be people. Machines are not going to be as good at working with people as humans are. I can't see a time in the near future, when I say near future, 5, 10, 15 years, I can't see a time where we would be comfortable speaking with robots when there is an option there to speak with a human. The idea of being managed, for example, by a robot is still a fairly far-fetched idea. So what I would say is, through the development of your critical thinking, your analytics skills, your ability to understand how these systems work and where their value is, you can't discount or forget the human aspect. Learn how to understand and work with others. Value diversity in your teams. How do we get the most out of working in distributed teams, or in teams that are now globally distributed? How do we leverage relationships online? All of that, all of those problems are human problems. So if you can hone those skills, working, managing, and understanding others, I think you'll be in good stead, regardless of what happens on the AI front.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, Tony, to bring us back to slide number 23, I'm going to try and answer as best as I can the question from Palvi, who wanted to go back to slide 24, but we'll go 23 and 24, and the next question as well, which is the transition process for PhD graduate. So that would be...
Am I on the right one, Joe? Or should I?
No, that would be the rankings one.
Okay.
Just one before, perfect. And we'll go to the next one after. That's perfect. Thank you very much. So as Tony has said before, basically why come study here at the University of Sydney, a postgraduate degree. So we are ranked #1 in Australia for graduate employability and #4 in the world. It is, I believe, the 6th consecutive year that we managed to get this ranking. Also, you can see top #1% in the world. What does that mean? We are the part of the 1% school of business in the world who have the Triple Crown accreditation. So you can see those little logos that Tony's pointing out. Yes, absolutely. So these 3 logos are really testament to the quality of the education that is delivered at the business school. And the business school is also part of the Global Alliance in Management Education, SAMS. And it is the only Australian partner that is part of this global alliance. That means we have partner university and partner institutions all over the world. So wherever you want to go, wherever you want to gain experience, you know, do your semester exchange or gain some professional experience, we probably have you covered because we have this massive network of partners, industry partners, and institution partners. Next slide, please. All right, and now we are going to quickly dive into the various opportunities that you get from studying at the business school. So we offer a wide range of programs to actually help you become career ready, future-proof your career, as we say, so you can build on some practical hands-on experience. So the idea is not for you to only remain in the classroom and, you know, study in your books and in your notebooks, as Tony was saying. It is really also about opening up your mind, exploring the world and understanding it. So, and obviously the best way to do this is to go out in the world and put into practice what you've seen into the classroom. And how do we do this at the business school? Well, we have the great industry placement program, which is a program that allows you to either work 3 days a week over 10 weeks within one of our industry partners. So that can be Deloitte, the OECD, Tourism Australia, UNESCO. We have all these big institutions partnering with us, or you can work over your summer or winter break. This program is particular to the business school, so it is really crafted for our business school students. And it is very, very rewarding. A lot of our alumni have gained a lot of very valuable practical professional experience through that program. Another thing that is worth mentioning is the Careers and Employability Office, which also hosts the Work Integrated Learning Program Hub. And so that Careers Office is fantastic because it really helps you learn how to network, gets you ready for you know, interviews. You go through workshops, you know, resume building, cover letter writing, and so on. And you get a lot of support from this office to get you ready for the market, whether it is locally or globally. Other things, you will be throughout your studies working on real-world consulting projects with our industry partners, as I mentioned before. So we have any kind of fields, any kind of areas that can be corporate, that can be not-for-profit. It can be, as I said, tourism, a lot of different fields for a lot of different passions and interests. And obviously for domestic students, you have the Commonwealth supported places available for most of the postgraduate courses except MBA and EMBA. Thank you very much, Tony.
You're most welcome. So, and a big thanks to Karen as well, who's super busy.
Yes, our link ninja in the background.
Yes. We've had some other questions. One was an interesting one about PhDs transitioning into industry. A rather short answer, which is fairly unique for me. When you're doing a PhD, when you're a researcher and an active researcher, the opportunities to partner with industry are plentiful. Some of that work is also remunerated fairly well, but you have these opportunities to do or work on research with our industry partners, and that's a great foot in the door. It's a great way to make that initial connection because you've had access to the organization, you've done a bit of research there, hopefully you've published that research to some effect, and that's probably the main pathway that people engaged in research with industry end up working or at least gravitating towards that industry. I had a student a couple of years ago now, before the pandemic, James, who was involved in a research project with me, a fairly modest one, but he was actually able to use that resulting publication on his CV, and he landed quite a nice job with Deloitte. So I was a little bit jealous, but good luck to him. So sometimes it's kind of looking at the gaps as well and doing some of the things that maybe all of the other students aren't doing, or you know, trying something a bit different that can pay off for you as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And look, right on the clock, if you didn't mind just sharing our Stay Connected slide again with the business school for our attendees. So if you are keen to find out more about the business school and our offerings, I know there was also a question about the COVID-19 situation, the opening of the borders. I understand obviously that this is a particularly pressing question. Feel free to go onto our website. Karen has just shared the link in the chat. So keep monitoring this page. It is obviously up to the government to really move these things forward, but all of the updates will be shared through that page. So make sure you bookmark it and keep an eye out on it. Again, I will share here just the email from Tony. If you have any more questions to ask him about this presentation, there it is on the slide, but you will also get it in a second right in the chat. Feel free to email him at any point. Obviously, you can see he's very approachable. And thank you very much for staying with us throughout the whole session and being so engaged on the Q&A box. Have a beautiful evening, and we hope to see you soon.